Welcome back to The Line and our final topic this week. In a move that has drawn criticism from various groups, Secretary of State Maggie Toulouse Oliver announced last week she would include straight party voting as an option on the 2018 ballot. The Secretary of State said that because she was on the verge of a ballot printing deadline of September 4th, which has passed, she had to announce the decision when she did. Now, those who oppose her decision, and there's a few of them, say it was a political move to favor the Democratic Party and likely illegal. And Sophie, I'll start with you. We've got
I'm not going to say whether it's illegal or not.
That's all right. By my count, I've got four, not quite plaintiffs, but four people opposed or groups opposed to this already. The sense of it is that she, announced she was thinking about this a few times.
I think it was part of her campaign.
Part of her campaign, the whole deal. But is it the problem the how, or was the problem the what?
Well, so in their filing, the plaintiffs are saying essentially that there are two issues. So there are two avenues they're asking the court to explore. And as of taping, we haven't seen the response from the defendant. But on one hand, they're saying, we didn't like the process of how this was done. We think that there needed to be hearings, there needed to be community input, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other is that our state laws prohibit it. So there are two avenues really that the court will have the opportunity to explore or hear about when there's a hearing on September 12th.
Dan, I want to parse out what Sophie just mentioned. There's been a couple of interesting things on the calendar, even back when you guys were doing your thing back in 2001, when we got rid of straight party voting. But then ex-Secretary of State Diana Duran, in 2012, there was some, you know what I mean?
It was still happening.
It was still happening, and then she got rid of it. So does this give Maggie Toulouse Oliver a little bit of wiggle room, or is that original 2001 decision the decision that's the
Yeah, so I mean, to me, that'd be like saying we have a new attorney general who's decided to impose the death penalty.
Okay.
No, the death penalty was abolished in New Mexico. Straight party line voting was abolished in New Mexico. If it wasn't abolished in New Mexico, why did the Democrat leadership 3 times introduce bills to specifically put back in straight party voting? So in New Mexico, it's the Secretary of State's job to print the ballots. There's no doubt about that. But there's multiple areas throughout the law that tell her how to do that, him or her how to do that. They don't just get to decide this is the way we want to do the ballot. So in 2001, the legislature actually voted and said we're doing away with straight party voting. No Secretary of State decided to implement the law until Diana Duran said, this is what the law says.
Right.
So the real question here that I think the average voter, at all of these positions that you run for, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, doesn't matter. The one place you hope after the election that becomes nonpartisan is the Secretary of State's office. You hope that as the person in the minority party, as a Republican, you're getting a fair shake by the ruling of a Secretary of State.
Do you consider this a
to
partisan move?
Oh, I think it's a purely partisan move. I mean, there's no reason for a Secretary of State to step forward and say, look, I'm going to do something like this, violate the law. I mean, the law clearly states that it can't happen. I'm not sure why Republicans are so upset about it. I get it. It's going to hurt Republicans up the ballot. As someone
I don't
who's
think
not,
the law actually says it can't happen.
it specifically
does.
does says
Removed.
there's no. It says that it was written in the law and was specifically taken out of the
It
law.
was removed, but it wasn't. There's no language that says no.
That's right.
straight
There's no
party.
language that says no straight party, but there's actually legislative intent to remove it because it's been introduced 3 times to put it back in by statute, and it's failed all 3 times. The interesting part, though, as an outside observer, and the reason I think that she's going to lose in court, is the people who are going to get hurt the most in this is going to be judges. Because retention races are not partisan races. So if you start getting, and in a state that's run by Democrats, when you get Democrats that go in and punch the Democrat button and walk out, they're not voting to retain a judge. So if you have an active movement to get rid of judges, it could really run havoc with retaining judges in New Mexico.
I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. Pick up on the senator, if you would. Again, you were around back then in the 2001 ruling as well. Does the Secretary of State have a point here? She's citing a portion of state law that says, quote, ballots shall, quote, be in the form prescribed by the Secretary of State, end quote. It's kind of a partial quote there. Give me a little wiggle room there. But does she have something going on there? Is there a crack at daylight?
No, she doesn't.
Okay.
Because, I mean, some flexibility might be whether you put it on an 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17. Right. That's flexibility. Okay. But as Dan mentioned, there are other parts of the law that say what shall be given. Like you shall draw names, and the names, candidates will be listed in that order. So there are lots of parts of the law that cover how the ballot must look and what must be on there. The thing, it was very clear at the time that we were doing away with voting, straight party voting, but, and as Dan said, there's been numerous attempts to try to reinstate it, and you're not reinstating something unless it's gone. So, I mean, I mean, sorry.
That's right.
What I find most interesting when I got to thinking about it is, how did we let the secretaries of state from 91 till Diana came in get away with not doing it?
Right.
By keeping the straight party
Sort of my
voting.
question too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'll have to do a little homework on that.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's very clear. And the point Dan made was when I was going to bring up the judges. Holy Toledo,
Right.
that could conceivably wipe out 50% or more of our judges, because there's a percentage of support they must receive.
Gotcha.
It's not just a simple majority.
Yep.
So it's really important.
The same with amendments and everything else. None of those are going to get a vote
Right.
on a straight party.
Right.
Senator Griego, is this the spirit of it? You know, is the
You know,
Secretary of State
so
doing it?
whether or not you agree with the decision, right?
Yeah.
You know, first of all, Secretary Toulouse Oliver, in my opinion, is the most competent Secretary of State we've had, if not ever, certainly in recent memory, given all the shenanigans with Diana Duran and so on. But I think there's a separation of powers issue here.
Okay.
I do not believe the legislature can say unequivocally that a statewide elected official who is the chief elections officer doesn't have the discretion to do this. So I think she absolutely has the discretion to do it, in my opinion. I'm also not a state constitutional lawyer. I'm not a lawyer at all. But I will say I think she has the right if she thinks. Now, whether or not it's a good idea, whether or not these unintended down ticket effects, I think we have to really look at it. If the Supreme Court does allow it and says she had the authority to do this, then I really do think we need to study what happened down ticket, how much drop off there was on bonds, on amendments, on the judicial races, because you know, there isn't this, despite what everybody says, there isn't this overwhelming sort of leaning toward one party or the other. This arguably could benefit either party. In fact, there's significant evidence to suggest that Republicans are much more likely to use this as a, you know, to sort of
Well,
get
let me
their
ask you
folks
this
elected.
on that point. It's interesting when you look at the stats. In 2010, 41% of voters chose straight party, 23% for Democrat, and 18% for Republican. That's not a huge gap there. There were takers on both sides. But my question would be, if there wasn't straight party voting, would those votes not have happened? I guess that's sort of a bottom line question there.
Well, remember, people can still, although all the most recent research is partisan voters are tending to be less likely to you know,
Yes.
to split their ticket, whether it's at the national level or at the government. So if you're not going to vote for you know, Steve Pearce and then say, oh, but I want to put a check on Steve Pearce, so I'm going to vote for the Democrat in my, that's not happening as much as people think it's happening.
Right.
I think what's more likely to be a factor in this election is who shows up, right? And if the Republican partisans are motivated to show up and they vote straight ticket, but a lot of folks try to manipulate the election process, the ballots, to sort of get advantage. I think there's a lot more people are reading into this than whether it's a sort of a really cold, calculated political move, because I don't think there's evidence that it's going to favor either party. Now, my bigger concern is the unintended consequences, what happens down ballot in Dennis and the judicial races and bonds and so on, as we've said.
I think there's a problem also with, you know, one of the things that this is going to prevent is that undervote, right? You kind of get to realize what your mandate is, right? You're running for governor, and all of a sudden, you know, you go into a legislative district and, you know, you underperformed a state rep by 18%.
Right.
You know, that's important to know
There you go.
what
I
parts of
gotta-
the state
I gotta
are
wrap up,
important.
unfortunately. Thank you all. Great subject.